Octavian Smith will be the next big Maryland receiver.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you guys for making us part of your day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Octavian Smith is going to be the next star receiver for Maryland football. I think it's been pretty much a consistent thing where it feels like Maryland football every single year has good receivers. It's something that I feel like we're known for. We have good receivers at the NFL level that have translated into the NFL level. We've had good receivers under Mike Locksley. We've had good receivers under other coaches. And I really believe that Maryland has done its best work with the receivers. And it feels like every year there's a new receiver that steps up, a new receiver that really breaks out. And when I say break out, I don't just mean like a guy goes for 300 yards and a couple guys look good. Like, we have some really good players usually in the receiver room, like all Big Ten types of players. We've had like guys like Raheem Jarrett. We've had guys like Ty Felton and Caden Prather. We've had some really good players in the receiving room, and we've had some really good guys go on to the NFL and translate it, like a DJ Moore a little bit of a while ago, but still not that long ago. A guy like Stephon Diggs, guys that have translated and have played at a Pro Bowl level in the NFL and are considered some of the better receivers in the league. And I believe that Octavian Smith is the next one. He's next up. I think he has the potential this year, and I think he will do it. I want to emphasize, I think a lot of people know he has the potential, but I'm going to tell you guys right now, he's going to be an all Big Ten type of receiver. I don't know if it's going to be second team, first team, whatever the case is. I think as long as our quarterback play is good enough, Octavian Smith is going to be an all Big Ten player, and I think he's really going to come onto his own and have a similar path as how Ty Felton was. When you look at Ty Felton's number and how he's progressed throughout his career at Maryland, obviously now he's with the Vikings, went in the third round. We're expecting him to obviously be a really good player in the NFL. But if you look at the way he progressed at Maryland and his last season at Maryland last year, Ty Felton was one of the best receivers in the country. I think Octavian Smith has a similar type of production in terms of progression and continuing to get better as what Ty Felton has. It's not quite the same. It's not exactly the same, but I do think it's similar. I think it's two similar types of players that are on the same type of trajectory. So one thing we saw about Ty Felton was every single year he got better. From a freshman catching 5 passes to a senior going for 96 receptions and 1,124 yards, Ty Felton continued to get better and better every single year, jumped from 51 yards to 309 yards to 723 yards to 1,124 yards. He looked really good his junior year, and I'm not going to sit in here and act like Octavian Smith looked as good as Ty Felton did his junior year, but we still saw flashes last year, his junior year, Octavian Smith's junior year, of him looking like a dude, him looking like a player for the Terps. Last year had 30 receptions, 315 yards in 2023, 22 receptions, 209 yards. In 2022, 12 receptions, 157 yards. So we haven't seen him have like an over 600 season like Ty Felton had his junior year, but we saw earlier production. As freshman year. He got 12 passes for 157 yards. And I'm completely expecting that 315 yards that he had last year, where he was competing with touches with guys like Ty Felton, who went in the third round, Caden Prather, who went in the seventh round. Our tight end room was taking up a lot of touches, where this year, to me, he's the guy. he's the guy. I think Jaleel Farouk next to him and Dorian Fleming are going to get a lot of touches and grabs as well. But I think in terms of an explosive threat down the field, I don't think we have a better player. I don't think we have a better guy than who Octavian Smith is. I don't think we have a better player than that. And I think that what I've seen from him so far with his speed, his athleticism, his twitchiness, what he does sometimes after the catch, his yak yards after the catch, some of the things that we see Octavian Smith do, it really makes you say, Octavian Smith can be one of the better guys out there, not only just in the not only just for Maryland, but in the Big Ten. And I think his role is so solidified. And now going into his senior year, he feels like he's been around for a long time for the Terps. He still kind of feels young in my head because I remember he came in as a freshman and looked really good. But now as a senior, it's time for Octavian Smith to be the next one. And I have never seen, I feel like every single year, I feel like the guy that we need to step up usually steps up. Last year is Ty Felton. There's been other guys in the past. And I feel like it'll be no different with Octavian Smith because, one, he's a jittery type of guy. He's on the smaller side, but he's explosive. He's fast. I don't see a real weakness in his game besides size. I think he can separate. I think he can run by guys. I think that he can run after catch. Like, I think he can run routes. Like, I think he does all the different things that you want in a receiver. He's just not 6'3", but there are plenty of guys that are his size that are really freaking good receivers. And I think Octavian Smith is next. I think he's going to be all Big Ten, like I said earlier on in this season. But I wanted to transition this thought into a more greater talk about Maryland's receiving room because I do think we know who the two dudes are going to be. Just talked about one of them, Octavian Smith, has been a pretty good player since he's been a freshman, but now we need him to take another step to being a great player, and I think he totally has potential to do that, and I think he will have the opportunity to do that, and I think he will end up doing that. And then you have Jaleel Farouk, who comes from Oklahoma, has had big years at Oklahoma, is the most experienced receiver in our room. You feel really good about those two guys. Jaleel Farouk had some big seasons at Oklahoma. I don't think people realize how good Jaleel Farouk was just because of the injury. But you had those two players. I think those feel like our top two guys. And then you can include Dorian Fleming in that cluster, in that group, because of what we know he's going to be in that tight end room in terms of receiving threat. He's going to be a best friend from Malik Washington or whoever the starting quarterback is. And then after Octavian Smith and Jaleel Farouk, it's really up in the air. I don't know. I really don't know who's going to be the players outside of those two guys. I want to believe it could be a ton of different guys. I want to believe that it can be Shalik Knox or Caleb Webb. I just don't know. There's not another guy that I'm like, yeah, I've seen it. I've seen them do it. Like when you go down the list, there's not a ton of experience. There's a lot of potential. There's a lot of like, he could do it, but there isn't a lot of like, yeah, he's shown it. He showed that he can do it at that type of level. We just haven't seen that from a lot of different players. Like Caleb Webb from Tennessee was a high-rated recruit, but we haven't seen him do it at Tennessee. But Kai White is a redshirt freshman. We saw him make big plays in the spring game, but he didn't play last year for Maryland. Shalik Knox, a lot of people talk about his potential and what he can be. We haven't seen him completely do it. Ryan Manning, we haven't seen on the field a ton. We know he's good. The former St. Francis player. I like his game. Zymer Smith is a guy in that receiving room that is a humongous kind of question mark. I have no idea what to do with Zymer Smith. He's kind of the similar type of build, if you will, as Octavian Smith, a little bit smaller, a little bit more versatile in terms of Zymer Smith is known as an athlete. But I don't know if Zymer Smith either going to be like the next guy or like he's a guy that has to be developed because we know he has some game-changing type of athleticism, burst, speed that you just don't normally see. But I just don't know what Zymer Smith is. I don't know right now. I'm like, are we playing him at running back? Are we playing him at receiver? Like, what's the deal with Zymer Smith? Because I certainly don't know. Haven't seen a ton of reports on it, so I don't know exactly. I haven't really read up on it either a ton, but I don't know exactly what we're going to do with Zymer Smith, but he's another player in that room that could be a huge kind of shift in the weight, depending on how good he was or how good he is early. Remember, he was committed to Bama. Like, this kid was a high 4-star recruit. A lot of teams wanted him, so he is interesting, has game-breaking speed, similar to Octavian Smith. But I want to go back to Octavian Smith. And so you see it. There's not a ton of experience. There's not a ton of guys that have produced. We know Octavian Smith has done it. And we know, and it's not like one of those things where it's like, oh, he's a veteran, but he's not like that talented. Kid is really talented. Like, I think he might be the best, most explosive athlete in that group. Zymer Smith might have an argument, but I don't know who else you would argue. So when you combine some of that experience and some of that talent, I expect Octavian Smith to go off this year, and we saw it sometimes last year. Minnesota was a big game where we saw it. 4 receptions, 51 yards. USC was the biggest game last year of his career, the one where he went for 8 receptions, 84 yards. Against USC, that's a pretty good team, and a touchdown. And there was other games. Oregon, he had 5 receptions for 46 yards. And that's why we had Ty Felton, who was demanding a ton of targets, and Caden Prather demanding a ton of targets, and Preston Howard and Dylan Wayne getting a lot of targets. Like, he wasn't the main guy in the offense. So now we're going to hand him a lot of the keys to be able to get a lot of those routes that is going to be your option A or option B. As a quarterback, we're going to be looking for him, or at least I think we will. I think Malik Washington is going to be looking for Octavian Smith. And we're going to see if it's really what we think he can be. So I do think that's going to be really interesting for the Terps. Next, we're going to talk about the training camp storylines. It was the first day of training camp for the Terps. Probably should have mentioned that earlier, but I want to talk about some of the bigger scheme storylines that I think we should all be talking about and what I'm going to be addressed. Also, quickly, sorry for the graphic. Canva's down, so I couldn't change it, but I still wanted to record this for you guys. So just ignore on today's show on the right. Just kind of listen in and hear kind of what we're going to be talking about. But next, we're going to be talking about training camp for the Terps, the biggest storylines, the most interesting things. We'll talk about that next. If you're trying to stay on top of your routine, whether that's workout, long days on campus, or staying focused through back-to-back classes, hydration is where it all starts. And that's where DripDrop comes in. When I'm on top of my hydration, I notice everything works better. My energy, my mood, my focus, even my skin. But getting enough fluids every day isn't always easy. That's why I've been loving DripDrop. DripDrop is a doctor-developed and scientifically proven for fast hydration. It uses the perfect balance of sodium, electrolytes, and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of leading sports drink. There's so many different packets, so many different flavors that you guys can do in DripDrop. I always keep a few packets in my backpack, and it saved me more than once from a midday crash. I know a lot of you guys have these, especially in the summers when it's hot. You got to be sweating it out. And right now, DripDrop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head to DripDrop.com and use promo code Locked On College. That's DripDrop.com with promo code Locked On College for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard. Let's talk about the biggest storylines coming out of camp for Maryland football. So there's been a couple different storylines. The first day of camp was yesterday, so we're kind of in the we're not in the full swing of things, but we're starting to kind of people are starting to talk about different things. There's different press conferences. There's just different things going on. And so there's a lot of different things that are really interesting about Maryland football. So there's one thing, the quarterback position. So he said he'll know who the starter is. What was it? It was week or so before the actual first game, and he said, we won't know until the first game actually starts. Mike Locksley says, obviously, this is the biggest part of what everyone's talking about. Everyone wants to know about the quarterback situation, whatever the case is. And Mike Locksley isn't going to tell us a ton. And we know he does this. It was like this last year. So we're not really going to know who the quarterback is for Maryland football. So we're still trying to figure that out. I believe it's Malik Washington. I feel like a lot of the media thinks it's Malik Washington as well. So we're going to see what actually ends up happening. I do think it's going to be Malik Washington, but we'll see what ends up coming true. I believe it should be Malik Washington, but I think it'll be interesting. So we'll see exactly what happens with that. But I think that's the biggest storyline. Everyone's going to be watching during camp. And I think it's going to be interesting what happens when the media is there, because eventually, you want one guy to be getting more probably snaps than you want one guy to get more snaps than the other guy. And I thought last year, in my head, I really think last year's quarterback position was closer than this year's. I feel like Malik Washington's just the guy, and that's just what it's going to be. So we'll see what happens. Other media asked other things about the receiving room. I want to touch on this. He said, that's a landscape. You got a guy that's been developed like Octavion Smith, and then you got a new guy, and I've had a strong relationship with, and I've known him since he was in the 8th, 9th grade playing running back for Bowie Youth Football Program in Jaleel Farouk. That's where we are, and that's a part that's exciting for me, because I always say the portal gives and takes, and we're able to bring in a guy like Jaleel and his production. He's a guy that's produced, 3 straight years there at Oklahoma, talented player that we know a lot about. Then you have your guy like Octavion Smith, who's a quarterback in high school. Most people recruited as a corner, and we see him develop into where he is, one of those guys that's leading that receiver room and the guy that's made plays from the time he stepped on campus. And to me, that's kind of how the sweet recipe for how Maryland needs to be, whether we build its foundation, these local high school players, and we've done it from the last couple of years with a couple top 25 classes. Then you add value through free agency, the portal, whatever you want to call it, by bringing guys like Jaleel Farouk. Let's see that value of what Maryland has been able to do in terms of putting players and developing plays for next level. So I think it is interesting, because I feel like I just talked about this, but he's kind of saying that's kind of the recipe today. For Maryland football, you develop a guy like Octavian Smith, who's not your traditional type of receiver, 4-star type of prospect that everyone knows is going to end up being pretty good, played quarterback in high school. And then you bring in an established guy like Jaleel Farouk to kind of replenish. And then so you feel good about the guy you developed and how he's going to play. Then you bring in an established guy. Then you have some of the other players to fill it out. And you should be able to have a good receiver room. He talked about Justin Martin, what he brings to this team. He says, I think the biggest thing with Justin is his experience, even though it's not a full resume just yet. So that's my thing about Justin Martin is experience is a thing, but experience without playing in the quarterback position, I feel like there is something to be said for it. But at the same time, it's like, how much an upper edge did he ever have on Malik Washington? And that's really why I believe Malik Washington is going to be the starter, because it's like, okay, yeah, this kid has been at UCLA, but it's not like he's played. And so it's not like he's gained a ton of actual game experience over Malik Washington. But that's just how I saw it overall. Everyone's going to see it differently. So that's kind of how I see it. But those are some of the basic headlines that I took from camp that I thought were interesting. There's a lot going on, though. I'll get into more of what the players said tomorrow. There's an interesting comment that added on to Mike Locksley's talk about losing the locker room, which I thought was really interesting. I think it was what Daniel Wingate said. I'll talk about that more tomorrow. That might be my first segment, because I thought it was like, I don't love how this sounds for Maryland football. So maybe it's good that we have a lot of new players. It feels like a replenished team. Maybe it is good in that way. A lot of people look at it a negative spot, and I have, but we'll talk about that more tomorrow. I did think that was interesting. But let's talk about Maryland basketball. A new commit, high-level commit could be on the way. Who is it? What's his name? What kind of player is he? We'll talk about that next. So Maryland basketball could land their next big commit somewhat soon. So this kid Trent Perry goes to Link Academy. Is a 6'4" small forward, I guess, shooting guard that could be the next Maryland commit, actually. So it's actually a really interesting type of player. He's from Texas. So I guess I I'm guessing that Buzz Williams recruited him back at Texas A&M. He has some other Texas offers like TCU, Texas A&M has been in on kind of his recruitment. Like he has some of those schools, Texas A&M, New Mexico State, Oklahoma State. Some of those schools over there have offered him, but this kid could be our next big commit. Visited July 29th. So we visited just a couple days ago. And it's a big talk because this kid might be the next Maryland commit. And I really like this kid's game. It feels like he's kind of bursting onto the scene. 247 is a lot higher than him than a lot lower, I should say, on him than a lot of the other websites. But a lot of the other websites have this kid as a 4-star rated prospect. Like a lot of other websites think of him actually really highly. He's 113th on the 247 composite, the number 43rd ranked small forward. So I do think he has a chance to be a good player, and I think he's a good guy to add to the recruiting class. He does need to fill out more. He's not the biggest cat we've seen, so I do think he does have to fill out. But a lot of guys do that go and play college basketball actually end up having to fill out. Add for Buzz Williams, and we're really seeing this really interesting trend that is something that is a really big deal. That Buzz Williams is really recruiting outside of the DMV area. Like he's not just going to the DMV area, but this kid's kind of a freakish type of athlete. When you watch the film and things like that, like gets to the rim, like dunks, that kind of guy. High flyer. I think has defensive upside. I think he's more of a two guard. Hopefully at the next level at only 6'4". Like it's not like that small, but I feel like that's more of a two guard. But he's got some of those. Like when you watch his tape and some of his highlights, and some of his transition buckets, he's got some dunks in him, which is definitely pretty interesting. A lot of offensive rebounds. So I don't know if his game's completely polished offensively. I haven't seen a ton of shooting in his tape, so I'm kind of interested in that more and how that is. But he's a freak athlete. Like when you just watch a couple of clips, you're like, oh, this is why people think pretty highly of the kid. Why people think pretty good. Like I don't know if I've seen a shot blocker this good at this type of level in high school at the guard position. So I think he's a buzz type of guy, like plays high level defense, things like that. He does throw some scoring ability in terms of some mid range game, but I think his main thing right now is getting to the hoop, which is totally fair. When you're a guy like that, freakish athlete, that's going to be a lot of your game is getting to the hoop and different things like that. So I definitely see him do that, but I think he's defensively a really high potential player for the Terps. We'll probably have to improve on the shooting, just guessing because I'm not seeing it on the highlight a ton. So I do think it's something he'll have to get better at. That's all we have for today. Thank you guys for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you guys for listening to Locked on Terps.